This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
We talked about the YouTube diver Jeremy Sides that found the two kids. This was the Aaron Foster and Jeremy Bechtel case. We kind of mentioned it in passing. There's a YouTube channel called Exploring with Nug, and the diver's a 40-something-year-old guy named Jeremy Sides. I did not realize he found a different missing person not long ago, a couple months back. I found this article while I was looking up stuff about him, where the Oak Ridge Police Department had confirmed that he had found the car related to the case of Miriam Ruth Hemphill. She's an elderly woman who went missing in 2005. He was using sonar on his boat on Melton Hill Lake. He found 7 cars at the bottom of this little lake.
And so did only one of them have a body in it?
It doesn't specify in the article that I was reading, but they were just talking about finding the bones inside and how hard it could be to close missing persons cases that were older. I talked to Bill Bass, who's a forensic anthropologist, and he was just talking about the best bet was teeth, but he references just Miriam's case. He doesn't say if there was another case, but this all comes about, this will be on CBS actually sometime over the holidays. They were talking about YouTubers helping solve cold cases around the United States and getting billions of views.
Was he just using his sonar and happened upon it, or was he on a mission? Did he know about her case and figure she may be in there?
It's a mixture of the two things. He didn't know about her case. He knew about cases. He basically just started, if you watch on the YouTube channel, he's just essentially looking for where missing persons are. It's sort of similar to what you do, where you're like, okay, they went missing with a vehicle, and in this area, this body of water is kind of off the radar, and this is the obvious body of water, but more than likely these people are in a body of water. He does that type of thing. Well, this set of cases where he's finding these bodies is not him setting out to find a specific person, but he does end up in 2 different cases. It seems like he's closed them. I thought that was pretty cool.
It is cool. People like that are the salt of the earth. It takes that kind of, now as far as identifying the bodies, etc. Now that's, from law enforcement's perspective, that is how they close a case. In my personal opinion, and I feel like if I was, if it were my family member or somebody I was looking for, I would be pretty good with finding the vehicle with a body in it. As far as unless there's something sinister going on.
Or very unusual, one or the other.
And it's proving to be more and more true that, most people who go missing in a vehicle are in water somewhere. And it could be a variety of reasons how they ended up there, but I feel like the straightest line between somebody, on their way somewhere on a normal day and then ending up at the bottom of a body of water for 20 years is like their own doing accidentally. Yeah. As unfortunate as that is, I feel like there's lots of people in their vehicles in bodies of water. Now, I have no interest in boating or sonar or anything like that, but I feel like people who, have interest in that and have, the tools to do it, I think it's awesome that some of them are now, even if it is getting them billions of views on YouTube or whatever, I feel like to go out there and do that, it's a very good cause and let them get their views, right?
That's a little different than just when people are just podcasting and YouTubing for the sake of podcasting and YouTubing. I do feel like we started with a pretty specific goal in mind. And I think we've held to most of that. In general, it's not reflective of the creators necessarily. I think it's the audience. Does that make sense? Like the audiences are kind of crazy. You call them headline skimmers, but there's other people that they consume very large amounts of true crime information, documentaries, things like that. We sort of do it as like part of this hobby or job, whatever you want to call it. But there's a level where I think it gets disturbing. And
I believe that we've passed that level.
We probably have, but
I do know what you mean. But here's my thought on that, and I've always felt this way about everything. And I'm the reason that I feel this way is because I'm guilty of it. Like, the more you absorb, the easier it is to miss details, to get things wires crossed on different cases. And so, you know how there's the saying, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
I'm like a perfect example of that because I like variety. And sometimes when we talk about cases, you set goals for the production of the podcast. And I'm just kind of like, I just show up and talk, basically. I'm not good at just talking about stuff off the cuff because I really want to look into stuff and make sure I'm not, and I'm not saying that you don't look into it, you just have a faster processing rate than I do. And so when you've got true crime enthusiasts that are just overloaded all the time, it does say quite a bit about the audience, the people who are doing it. I'm guilty of doing it myself. But I always try to remember that I shouldn't get like too excited about somebody else's life that is a true crime story.
It's super easy to forget that there are real humans involved.
Well, and I've made it a point not to, because I am fully engrossed in everything true crime available entertainment wise, as far as reading and watching stuff. And nobody in my family can stand it. Like, they just can't stand, me having true crime on all the time. And because it's depressing, right?
Yeah.
Except not to me. I mean, there have been cases we've gone over that have made me depressed over time, but I find it fascinating. And I feel like there's always something to be learned from the different cases that are. I don't know if you found this or not, but as far as a big crime case goes that is going to get some attention in mainstream media, I find it hard to find a new case. And what I mean by that is, if it's been on a show, I know about that case. Yeah,
I find myself searching. I don't know. I have a bunch of pet cases, and some of them aren't necessarily recent. Some of them are, where anything that comes on, I will watch it. But I find a lot of the information is not only repeated, but sometimes I question what is put out there, like in documentaries, and like some of them aren't even really documentaries. They're more like docudrama.
Right. Well, and I know there's actually, I'm not going to name them, but there's like news shows that they actually use the same clips.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody else has noticed that too, but like, they'll cover, and it'll be like consecutive. So one will air Friday, one will air Saturday, and it's the same story, kind of regurgitated, slightly different. But like, the people that are on the shows are wearing the same clothes.
Yep.
That's it was mind-boggling to me at first, but it makes sense because it's just a matter of who the audience is, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And I really, One thing about true crime is you never know what's next. What is the next story that's going to be happening? Because there's always stuff happening. And it's actually like, I wish that we had nothing to talk about. I wish that there was never anything interesting that came up again, right? So we'd have all the stuff in the past, but then violent crime would just cease to exist. But that's not the case, right? And I don't get I'm not really interested in cases that have sort of been, they've been solved, put to bed, justice has been done, or the best that it can be done. I really like the mystery of like a missing person, right? Or a case that's not solved. And so to me, like true crime, once it goes full circle, not everything that everybody thinks is true crime is what I would agree is true crime. From my perspective in us doing this show.
I recently watched, I don't know, I got one of those deals where you get some television service for 99 cents a month for a year or whatever, if you get it on Black Friday. And I watched No Man of God, which is yet another like Ted Bundy movie. And there's another one that I haven't seen yet that I now have put on the list because of looking up stuff about No Man of God. And it's so interesting to me to see those shows where they put actors in those roles. And that one's actually pretty fantastic as far as the study of Bundy, if you're coming into it and you don't know anything about Bundy. But overall, I found that like there was only a couple of sort of new things or new perspectives on things that came out of it for me.
Yeah, I learned just about everything I feel like there is to know about Bundy when we did our mini on him. And I didn't know a whole lot about him before we did that, but unfortunately, and I haven't seen that yet. Is it a movie or a series?
It's a movie. It's like a one.
I haven't watched it yet, but I will. And what I found is when I know a whole lot about cases, I'm really disappointed in how they're conveyed, the creative license that's taken, or like just the general misunderstanding of the cases. But I see these large gaps between the research I've done. And I say large gaps because I don't know necessarily that I'm right. I just know that the information is different in the story that I researched and learned about and the story that's portrayed. And I don't have a good example right at the moment, but it happens all the time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'll be watching something and they'll say something that's either false or like speculation that's not being declared speculation that they're presenting as a fact. And I'm just like, what? I find I've stopped listening to true crime podcasts, and then I have The Vanishing still on my phone. I like The Vanished podcast about missing people because she has some very interesting perspectives, and when like they do an amazing research job. So I like to listen to them, and that's it. Like everything else has moved over to comedy now. There's one called Hollywood Crime Scene that they tell a lot of older stories. So I've kept them. I haven't listened to them in a while, but I've kept their episodes on my phone for like when I'm stuck somewhere and just want to listen to something. I found myself recently digging into some tabloids, and I was going to tell you about this. That's the reason I'm bringing all this up. Have you heard any more about Heidi Plank?
I heard that they are looking for her in a landfill.
Do you know why?
I actually don't know. I did look briefly.
Okay, I wasn't sure because I wanted to tell you why, and I figured I'd just record it since we have just a couple of like shorter cases in today's episode. I was going to mention this to you. So in The Sun, you know what The Sun is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The U.S. version of The Sun, or the U.S. Sun, they ran an article on December the 11th where they sort of rehashed a lot of the information related to Heidi Plank. But then they said this. This is their bombshell claim, and it's an exclusive to The Sun. Alex Diaz was the writer on this one. Heidi Plank overdosed on fentanyl-laced Adderall at party with strippers and crypto gambling, so revelers dumped her body in a trash chute. Okay, so keep in mind, this is coming from The Sun. It's not a news source. It's a tabloid, but I want to read a few paragraphs from this because it is interesting. Cops have been searching for almost 2 weeks at a landfill site in Castaic, 50 miles north of a building where Heidi Plank was last seen on CCTV cameras with her dog, Seven, in downtown LA. Officers have said they found evidence at the Hope and Flower apartment building, which led them to believe that Heidi is dead. It is understood they were led to the Chiquita Canyon landfill because it's where the waste disposal company working at the apartment building dumps its trash. Now, internet sleuths who have been investigating the case claim to have solved the riddle of what happened to Heidi. Dawn Heim, 50, who has worked 21 years as a paralegal in Los Angeles and co-hosts the Mao and Boots True Crime in Real Time show on YouTube, made the bombshell claim on Friday. The mom of 4 told The Sun that she thinks she may have cracked the case after visiting Hope and Flower on Wednesday with a friend of Heidi's to tend to a vigil site erected nearby by her friends and family. While they were there, they were approached by a woman who lives in the building and who Heidi's friend had spoken with before. The woman asked them to come into the building to help fix a flat tire on her Maserati car through Dawn's AAA. Dawn was left stunned when the woman eventually claimed she had witnessed Heidi die from an overdose after taking the anti-ADHD drug Adderall laced with fentanyl at a party on the 40th floor. The alleged witness also claimed that she came face-to-face with Heidi's remains in the trash chute after it got stuck on the 28th floor. And yet, in another bizarre twist to the tale, Dawn says the witness later flipped out when she and Heidi's friends tried to leave and sucker punched Dawn from behind, leaving her with a concussion. Dawn told The Sun, "I was told that Heidi went down there to see someone she'd been dating who lives in the building and get some Adderall from him. There was a huge party on the 40th floor, so she dropped her dog off with a dog sitter, which apparently she's done before. She was up at this really big party. There was gambling with cryptocurrency. There were a lot of drugs and strippers, and they had brought a stripper pole up there, and they had a DJ. I was told by several people that Heidi got extra Adderall from the boyfriend, that she was addicted to Adderall, but nothing else. She did not do any other drugs, but they told me that the Adderall had been laced with fentanyl. I was told that she OD'd in the middle of the dance floor, fell down, and broke a glass that she had in her hand. A group of people tried to revive her, but they couldn't. They got scared because there was a lot of illegal stuff going on in that apartment that night. So a bunch of them took her out, and they put her in the garbage chute and pushed her down. The girl who was telling me this was there and saw it happen, and she heard Heidi fall down the chute, but didn't hear her stop. She said she went to check the chutes down to the 28th floor, and when she opened the door to the trash chute on the 28th floor, she saw that Heidi was stuck there. The woman told me this in front of 3 other people who work in the building, and they were like, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. She also shared videos and a pic, which I was told show the party in the aftermath of Heidi losing consciousness. Dawn clarified the man who Heidi was allegedly dating at the building is not her charity executive boyfriend mentioned in previous reports, Naeem Salam. One of the video clips he referred to, which The Sun has seen but is not publishing at Dawn's request, appears to show a woman in a bra and thong with high-heel boots clearing something away on the floor below a stripper pole. The pic shows what looks like a nightclub-style scene in a dark room with blue lights, a woman apparently holding a trash bag, and what appears to be a DJ in the background. It is time-stamped to Sunday 11:41 a.m., matching the day of the week that Heidi was last seen, but not the time, which would have been around 10 p.m. rather than in the morning. A second video clip shows what appear to be a half dozen or so scantily clad young women in the same room that is shown in the photo. There's no sign of Heidi in either the videos or the photo. The Sun has not been able to independently verify if they were taken at Hope and Flower. Anyways, I was just sharing this part with you. It doesn't get much more interesting. That's pretty much what they're saying right now. This is tabloid information, not a reliable source at all. I just found it interesting that it's a true crime YouTuber who's bringing all this up.
Well, it seemed like somebody had fast and loose lips, and as much information that has been in mainstream media, it's surprising they didn't talk to somebody else.
I don't know what to say to that. I just left it alone. I mean, I was sharing it with you and recording it here because it's Christmas time, and this is sort of now it's become a December release for this article and this news. And they are still searching a landfill. That's been confirmed.
That's the craziest thing, though, because I find it, and maybe somebody has told the police this story. It doesn't seem like anybody's really hiding it, but it is odd to me. In my experience, it's always been a situation where the more people who are involved in something, the less likely it is to stay a secret, right?
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
it does sound like there was, like you said, quite a bit of illegal activity going on, but, all that stuff falls away when you're talking about murder or overdose and dumping a body or whatever. And so, I don't know. I find that hard to believe. I do hope that they figure out what happened to her, though. It seems, did the dog sitter just let the dog go?
I guess so. I guess that's the idea there. It doesn't account for everything in the story, which a lot of times tabloid stories just sort of gloss over certain things. And
I don't know. I find that interesting. I feel like that's a very bold story to tell. And I guess if you can say somebody else told you it, then why not?
Yeah, it's one of those things where all I'm doing is I'm more talking about the sensationalism of the story.
Yeah, it really is a sensational story. And we had talked about her briefly, and I did note that they did find her vehicle. And so, because I had said that until they find her vehicle, I feel like she's probably in the Pacific Ocean, right? That's what
water, yeah.
And so when they found her vehicle, I did make a mental note of it, but I haven't gone back to sort of reassess that because, I just haven't had time. We've been doing other stuff. So,
yeah.
But, after that, obviously something happened. They are looking for, I did see where they were searching the landfills. They didn't elaborate that as much as the Sun's story did as far as why, but, they had evidence that led them to believe that. And, clearly somebody talked about something, but it seems like that version of the story misses quite a few.
Yeah, it does.
And it also seems like perhaps that lady needed to borrow AAA and wanted to get
on a scam, you mean?
Well, no, I mean, from what you read, it seems like the conversation was in exchange for her calling AAA.
She was telling a story.
And then the attack part of it, I think I would have called the police and kept my mouth shut about the rest of it because that's really weird. It sounds like that person may have been taking Adderall laced with fentanyl.
Very well could be.
And they also say it's an anti-ADHD medicine. Did you notice that?
I noticed that they said that, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually just an ADHD medicine. It's not an anti-ADHD medicine.
I was not commenting on the validity or the quality of the writing.
I'm just saying, it's not for the opposite of it. It is actually made to combat it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, so we're going to move into a Christmas story because that's what we're doing right now. I don't think any Christmas episodes would be complete without having at least one Santa massacre.
Right. So today, I'd like to think of this as a public service announcement of what to think when your estranged ex-husband, who you aren't on very good terms with, shows up at your house with a Santa suit.
Yeah. So there's a couple of these in here, but we're starting with the Covina massacre.
It's actually kind of shocking that there's more than one.
Yeah. I actually had to narrow it down to just a couple, and I was like, oh, wow. Covina, California is it's one of, have you ever been to Covina?
No, I have not.
So it's in the valley. One of those things where like the only thing I can think of when it comes to Covina is there's this theme song to this show my wife used to watch.
My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
Correct.
Yeah. That's
And
exactly what I think of too.
it's West Covina is the setting for that particular show. We had a couple of links to this. It actually has its own Wikipedia page, and then you found something on the Scare Chamber. So those are our sources for this part of what we're talking about.
Sometimes when I'm researching things, I look at several sources and then I remember a detail that I then can't find. It's very annoying. Have you ever done that?
Oh yeah, all the time. I go through entire cases that I want to cover and then research for days, and then something happens. I have to go do life, and when I come back, I have no idea what I was researching.
These cases start to merge together, especially I find the 12 Days of Christmas project that we're doing, it's actually been quite difficult because all the different things just merge together.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's pretty complicated to do. I mean, we don't normally do 12 episodes in a month, and now we're doing 12 episodes in what's essentially 12 days is how they'll release. And that has been challenging. This guy stood out to me for one very specific reason. He's my size. And I can't imagine myself in a Santa suit. He is 6'4", 220 pounds.
Yeah, and he had to special order the suit.
The story that we're covering in Covina, California, which is a city in the suburbs of Los Angeles, technically east of downtown LA, comes from December 24th, 2008. And other people have covered this. It's just we're covering it because we needed a Santa. And Bruce Jeffrey Pardo has volunteered to be our true crime Santa.
One of them.
So this is how this goes down. At 11:30 p.m. Pacific time, Bruce Pardo, dressed in a Santa Claus suit, knocks on the door of his former in-laws' house, occupied by about 25 people. And he has a gift-wrapped package containing a rolling air compressor converted to deliver gasoline from it. So this guy made himself a flamethrower. He has at least 4 9mm semi-automatic handguns. Moments after the door opened, Pardo pulled out the handguns and he immediately shot his 8-year-old niece, Katrina Yusufpolsky, the daughter of Letitia Yusufpolsky, a sister of Sylvia Pardo, who is Bruce's ex-wife. As this little niece runs to him,
she runs to Santa. Yeah.
She runs to Santa to greet Santa. And she gets shot in the face. He then fires indiscriminately at the fleeing partygoers. Police speculate that Pardo may have stood over and executed some of the victims using the other handguns. After the shootings, Pardo unwrapped the packets containing the compressor. Why even wrap it at all? He used it to spray gasoline, and he set the home ablaze. 9 people died from either gunfire or flames, and 3 others were wounded. Katrina was shot in the face, but ends up with severe but non-life-threatening injuries. A 16-year-old girl shot and wounded in the back, and a 20-year-old woman suffered a broken ankle when she jumped out of the second-floor window. There was one survivor who called the authorities during the attack after escaping to a neighbor's house. And the resulting fire soared approximately 40 to 50 feet in the air. It took 80 firefighters an hour and a half to extinguish. Due to the intensity of the fire, identification of the victims was done with dental and medical records. This is crazy because all of this took place in like seconds.
Right. And you've got a family, like a huge family Christmas gathering. Now, you said, why even bother to wrap it? I imagine his thought process was that he was already going to be sort of, really obvious as a very large Santa. And so he had to probably, thwart any weird looks at him by not rolling just a canister of gasoline down the road.
Rolling over to the scare chamber, they talk about his background. Bruce Pardo grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, California. He graduated from John H. Polytechnic High School, and he went on to study computer science at California State Northridge. He graduated from there and secured himself a job at JPL, or Jet Propulsion Laboratory, as a software engineer. He wasn't a model employee, and he spent time hacking the company's system to access private personnel information, including but not limited to compensation, tax information, etc. He also had very poor attendance. Despite all of this, by 1988, at the age of 24, he found himself engaged to Delia, a fellow employee. Bruce still lived with his mother and wasn't in the best financial shape. So Delia agreed to pay for a wedding reception at the country club and a honeymoon in Tahiti. Everything was all set up. Both Bruce and Delia's mothers were excited. The big day arrived on June 17th of 1989, and Delia was waiting at the church in nervous anticipation, but Bruce never showed up. She later discovered he'd withdrawn $3,000 from their joint bank account and took a trip of his own to Palm Springs, Florida. So she called off the engagement and things went back to how they used to be. But it wasn't until 2001 that Bruce found himself in another difficult situation. He was living with his girlfriend, Eleanor, and their 13-month-old son, Matthew, in Woodland Hills, California. It was probably the most stable relationship that Bruce had ever had, and things were going very well. That is until the day that Eleanor went out and left Bruce home alone with the baby. Bruce turned on the television and he got engrossed in something, and he wasn't paying attention to Matthew. The boy fell into the backyard pool. When Eleanor returned home, she found Bruce holding their son hysterical. Matthew was rushed to the hospital, and after just 1 week of intense medical attention, the doctors informed them that their son would never recover. In fact, Matthew had sustained brain damage and was now a paraplegic. As Bruce did when things got hard, he left, never to see his son again, despite his mother's continued interest in and support of the child, meaning Bruce's mother. In 2004, a coworker of Bruce's introduced him to his sister-in-law, Sylvia. Sylvia was a 40-year-old mother of 3, and they hit it off right from the start. January 29, 2006, the couple gets married. Bruce purchases a 3-bedroom, $425,000 home in Montrose. The happy family attends church together. Bruce even volunteers as an usher. But things were not what they seemed. The relationship was suffering under financial stress, and then Bruce's mother, Nancy, decided to say something. She was quite fond of Sylvia. She knew that her son had his own issues. So she told her about her son's past relationships, including about Eleanor and Matthew. Sylvia was shocked by this revelation. She didn't know anything about Matthew, and she was further angered by Bruce's dishonesty and his lack of responsibility. Then it was discovered that although Bruce hadn't seen his son since that day in the hospital, he continued to claim him on his taxes as a dependent. So in April of 2008, Sylvia filed for divorce and Bruce spiraled into depression. In June, he purchased his first handgun, a 9mm. On June 18th in divorce court, he was ordered to pay $1,785 a month in spousal support. He wrote his first check and it bounced. And then he stopped payment on the second check, and then he never tried to pay again. On July 31st, he was fired from his job for billing fraudulent hours. He applied for unemployment but was denied, as workers who are fired are deemed ineligible. That threw me off a little bit, by the way. I went back to look for that detail. I wasn't sure. I always thought if you get fired, you are eligible, but if you quit, you aren't.
No, because, I think if it's fired for cause, and I think California might be special.
Okay.
But, typically it's through no fault of your own is the term. Whether it's fired, laid off, or whatever, it has to happen through no fault of your own, which billing fraudulent hours would not be through no fault of your own.
That makes sense to me. On August 8th, Bruce purchased another 9mm handgun, followed by another purchase on September the 8th. and then he contacted one of his neighbors who happened to be the proprietor of Jerry's Costumes. His neighbor's name was Jerry. He requested a custom-sized Santa suit with a little extra room for comfort, as he was 6'4" and 270 pounds at the time. Elsewhere, I found this reported as 220 pounds. That's my size. I'm 6'4", 220. If he was 270, that is a big dude. But a standard suit would be too small. He told Jerry that it was for a children's party, and he paid a $200 deposit with a promise to pick it up and pay the rest in November. I don't know if I said he, but Jerry may actually be a woman. On October the 11th, he purchased a fourth handgun. He received a call from an old high school friend, Steve Irwin, who asked him over to his home in Iowa to celebrate his 45th birthday. Bruce accepted, and while he was there, he confided in Steve. He was embarrassed that his personal life was open and on display in court, where everyone could see his finances, and now knew of his firing. Even more so, he was upset that he and his mother hardly spoke now, and during the divorce proceedings, she chose to sit with Sylvia's family, not providing support to her own son. November came, and Bruce returned to Jerry's Costumes and paid the outstanding fee for his costume. He even left her a $20 tip.
She is a girl.
Yeah. On the 13th, he purchased yet another handgun, now totaling 5. He also acquired a DeWalt air compressor, a 50-foot hose, and a tank of high-octane fuel. Just 1 week before Christmas, on December the 18th, 2008, Bruce's divorce from Sylvia was final. He agreed to let her keep her diamond engagement ring, and he agreed to pay her $10,000. The next day, he went to a Montrose travel agency where he booked a ticket to Iowa, where he would visit his friend Steve. He paid $650 for a round-trip flight that would depart at 12:20 a.m. on Christmas Day and return 2 weeks later. He rented a Dodge Caliber from Budget, then rented a silver RAV4 from Rent-A-Wreck. He loaded up the RAV4 with maps of the Southwest United States, as well as water, food, clothing, a tank of gas, a laptop, and a desktop computer. On Christmas Eve, he stopped to chat with a neighbor, saying that he was headed out to a Christmas party. He was signed up to serve as an usher for midnight mass at the church, but he didn't show up. Instead, at approximately 11:30 p.m., dressed in his Santa suit, Bruce knocked on the door of his former in-law's house, where he knew his ex-wife would be. And as I previously said, the door was answered by his 8-year-old niece, who was excited to see Santa Claus and rushed toward him. He didn't hesitate, though. He fired and hit her in the face. After he went on shooting indiscriminately at the frightened party guests, and then, when he was done shooting, he unwrapped the gift he had brought with him, the flamethrower. He sprayed the gasoline around the home, intent on lighting it with a flare. Unfortunately for Bruce, the flames from 2 separate fireplaces triggered an explosion. Bruce fled the house, dropped a fake pair of glasses and a Santa hat in the yard. He jumped into the Dodge Caliber that he had rented, and he drove 30 miles to Sylmar, parking about a block away from his brother's home. He carefully peeled the shredded Santa suit off his body, as it had melted into his skin from the explosion, causing third-degree burns. He used the suit to set up a booby trap. If the suit was moved, a tripwire would ignite a flash flare and ignite 200 rounds of ammunition. Bruce's brother returned home around 3:10 a.m. and found him sprawled in the living room on the couch with 2 handguns by his side. He was dead, having shot himself in the mouth. So he goes to his brother's house and then just shoots himself.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
But so I feel like, so that gave more of a background, right? On sort
Bruce. That's why I went through that. Yeah.
Was going on. And he clearly he's what I would think of as sort of a man-child. And the reason I say that is because we get a little bit of insight when he visits this old friend who put a little bit of information out there and says, he was so disappointed because his mother had sat with Sylvia, and he felt like, I'm sure that felt like she was betraying him a little bit. And I'm sure he felt like Sylvia was betraying him by divorcing him because he had been dishonest and irresponsible. He'd been dishonest to her about being irresponsible for a child that it was an accident. He wasn't paying attention. The child was hurt, right? What did he expect them to do? I have a huge problem. It doesn't even have to be a man. It can be any person. Any person who acts out and then they like blame you for your emotional response to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane because his behavior was bad. And the best thing he could have done would have been to come clean, but it doesn't seem like that would have been in his, that it doesn't seem to be the kind of person he was because of the way he sort of put things and clearly how everything ended. Now, he did go to his brother's house and he shot himself. His brother, I don't think anybody was at the house.
No one was home.
And I don't think that had been the plan.
No, he had so in spite of what I just read, he had multiple plane tickets that he had bought. They at first they thought maybe he was going to flee to Canada and maybe elsewhere. He had Iowa plane tickets supposedly, but he also had a flight itinerary on Northwest Airlines from Los Angeles to Illinois with a layover in Minnesota. There were multiple different things he had to throw people off.
Right, exactly. So nobody would have any idea where he went.
And he'd also rented multiple cars. Like, there's a lot going on here. They did say he had $17,000 wrapped.
That was melted to him.
Yeah, the girdle that he wrapped it in, he had it inside the suit, and apparently everything had kind of melted. Oh, man, that's just crazy. He was armed with a lot of stuff, handgun-wise, but he also had with him, in addition to the flamethrower, he had a Benelli M2 tactical shotgun. And so he rigged the car, and the car ends up catching on fire from the flash flare when they're trying to dismantle it, the Santa suit booby trap, so to speak. So the car ends up starting a fire and basically destroys anything that's in the fire, destroyed the vehicle. The death toll for this is 10 people, although Bruce Pardo is one of them. The victims were his ex-wife. She died of a gunshot wound. Alicia Ortega is her mother, Sylvia's mother, his mother-in-law. She died of a gunshot wound. Her husband, Alicia's husband, Joseph Ortega, and Sylvia's father, he died from multiple gunshot wounds. His brother-in-law, Charles, his sister-in-law, Sherry, his brother-in-law James, his sister-in-law Teresa, his sister-in-law Alicia, and his nephew Michael all perished. They don't have the causes of death laid out beside those. Michael died in the fire for sure. He was 17.
The rest of them were shot.
But they don't know what the cause of death was. But they just basically said it's a combination of gunshot wounds and fire.
Right. So a couple of things there. So everybody that was in that house lost somebody they were related to. I imagine several of them lost their parent, like both parents. It seems like
those kids lost both. I think it's both parents, but I think one of them had a surviving dad, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know how the breakdown goes, and nor should we, because it's really none of our business except to express sympathy that this happened to them. But again, I would say this goes even into man-baby territory. By the way, there can be women babies too. But, a man-baby is somebody who would take children's parents away from them on Christmas Eve while dressed as Santa. That is a man-baby.
Yeah.
He lived a terrible existence. I mean, I don't want to sound judgmental, but I guess I do. And there's just really not a whole lot I can say about someone who, his first marriage, he didn't show up. And he put all that on her. Now I'm guessing, do you think it's possible this guy just didn't know how to say, I don't really want to marry you. And I can't live with the fact that I did this to my child. And things like that might have, as opposed to him being this ultimate man baby, he really just had no sense of self where he could realize that everybody's human and that he made mistakes and that if he was honest about them, it would be better.
So I have I don't disagree with what you're saying, but my first, my gut instincts about him are a little different. I think he was a mama's boy. In fact, one of the notes I found
There's
about
no
him.
question he was a mama's boy.
He wanted to kill his mom, and he wanted to kill, like, he had plans to kill other people. Like, his spree was not over.
It was the explosion that
Yeah, the
he
burning
went down on
part.
that.
Yeah, so best laid plans and all that. But my take on him, divorce sucks. I am divorced. It's not fun. Divorce with a kid is even weirder. So I'm torn. I can go either way with this. One is he either just doesn't understand how to human, that would lead more to the man baby side of things and like not knowing how to do things. But he does have some interesting skills from the perspective of he's employed, he's educated. There's some
He
stuff
wasn't employed at this time, was he?
Well, I'm saying he's had jobs.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, if he is hired at JPL, he's given you have to have to be a software engineer at JPL, you got to have some kind of clearance. So
But he got fired.
That's totally fine. I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying he had a job prior to being fired during this divorce time. But where I'm headed with this is more like sometimes you just look back at like things you've done, and you sort of either go, I need to fix my shit, or you go, that's not my fault. Why does this keep happening to me? And this feels like more why does this keep happening to me? And him not being able to like realize that he's bringing it all on himself. He has to find someone to blame. So who is responsible when it comes to people like that, right?
Everybody else.
Yeah, everybody but them. So that's what he seems to be doing to me. It's just like he thinks his life is shit because his life is shit.
Well, yeah, it is. But I don't know that he would really. I don't know that it is a coping mechanism to like say, oh, everybody else's fault. But I do think that there's people who genuinely never grasp the fact that, well, yeah, other people have stuff to do with it, but like it's ultimately in your control. Because even if you are facing situations that suck, which everybody does, it's still your choice in how you respond to it.
Yeah, and that's where the man baby part comes back in for me, because look, life's not perfect. And even though it's not perfect, your approach and your ability to say whatever you want to call it, roll with the punches, find a fresh perspective, make lemonade out of lemons, whatever, your approach to life changes how your life works. And this guy never got out of the approach where pretty much it looks like things were pretty easily handed to him as a mama's boy. And, he even like was pissed off that his mom was sitting with her family. But that's the smart place to be sitting at that point for her.
Right. And so it seems to me like that would cause him to pick up on something like, oh, wait, why is my mom there? But it also seems to me like perhaps she couldn't bring herself to make an adjustment on a 45-year-old man that should have been made when he was like 5. As far as him realizing that, well, nobody's going to support you. And I can't think of a single person, even, a friend, an enemy, an acquaintance, a business associate. I don't feel like anybody on earth is going to say it was completely fine for you to walk out of your son's life after you made him a paraplegic. You walked out of his life. You've never seen him again, but yet you claim him on your tax. You claim him as a tax deduction. There's nobody on earth that's going to go, man, that was okay. I can't believe that your wife was mad you hid that from her.
I look at that situation and it's almost like he's paying his penance with the second situation. Although he got pretty lucky. Like he could have made either one of those situations work. And you know what? You probably could go to That's a point in time where I don't know that this would work, but someone like Sylvia, you could probably say to her, you know what, you're totally right, and I'm gonna go deal with that.
I feel like his mother should have not told Sylvia. I don't feel like it was her place, but I feel like she should have raised a son that
Wasn't
would
going to be
have.
that kind of liar.
Well, right. And so I'm sure he had a lot of blame for his mother, and I'm sure his mother felt like she was doing the right thing. It's always the best bet when you're married, you want to be the one having the discussions, the important discussions. You don't ever want it to be going through someone else, because there's really no recourse for that a lot of times. Like in this situation, because his mother did tell her, I mean, there was nothing he could say, right? If she had encouraged her son to come clean, that would have been a different story, I think. I think that would have been a better approach, because if it had come from him, and, because in any sort of relationship, if you're like brutally honest with somebody, even if it really sucks, a lot of times, I don't want to say like, I mean, it's not really a game, but you get points for being brutally honest and saying, look, I've really messed up and I need your forgiveness, right? Or whatever. And if it's genuine, that's a place to start from. At least it doesn't assure that things are going to, work out necessarily in your favor. But I think that the accumulation of events that led up to this wouldn't happen if he had had the ability to say things like that.
Yeah. So one of the things that came out in the divorce record was that when they got married, there was one thing going on as far as like how everything worked financially, but then he refused to open a joint account with her. And he also expected her to take care of her 3 children. So Sylvia had 3 children. She was 40 something. She had 3 children, and she was expected to take care of her kids with her money. And that line, it made everything particularly worse.
I would say that that would be an indication that you should probably wait till your last child is in college before you get married.
Yeah, I would agree to some extent. I would agree with that comment. I mean, sometimes people do need a team; they need partners. I'm a person that like I do better with a team.
Right, but I guess my biggest thing would be that's not a good way to, like, if so I'm married to the father of my child, right? So we're both
Right.
his parents, and I'm not divorced, and I don't have any experience with that. But I would say that, if that were to change for some reason, anybody that was like, your kid, your responsibility, I would be like, I don't think that's going to work, because when you are in a family, especially living in a house all together, you don't want a situation where you've got an adult that, is not parenting your children. I mean, it's just weird, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
I realize that a lot of people can't put aside the fact that, when you have children, you should be a parent first. And they end up marrying people that don't like their children, or their children don't like. And, that's why therapists are in business. But usually it's not this extreme, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a kid that lives in my home, my child, that is not the child of my wife. That very early on, I told her, this is years ago. I said, because when I realized the kid was coming to live with me full time, it sort of changed the landscape for me. And I said, if that's not your thing, I'm not offended. Like, we can come back to this later. We can do whatever.
Exactly, which is what I feel like would have been a better fit with Sylvia and Bruce. Him saying the line was that she paid for her children, and I guess for him to be such a like you said, educated, middle-aged white man capable of getting a good job, it seems like he would have been the provider, or at least he had like every opportunity to be the provider, right? And that goes back to the whole man-child thing, though, because what's he paying for? I mean, hopefully he's paying the mortgage on the house, I guess.
I mean, I look at situations like this and I hear what everyone is saying about it's financial stress. But okay, if you're suffering from real, honest to God financial stress, you don't buy 7 plane tickets, rent 3 cars, and over the course of a year, like fill your pockets with handguns and all these other expensive things that he's doing.
He didn't have the. I mean, I'm sure he would say that there was financial stress there, but that's not what led him to this.
No, this is where he lost his kid. That was really his only try. And he never recovers. He's already a man-child because that's how the kid dies. I mean, not dies, but becomes paralyzed. That his previous relationship was his go at adulting. And he decided he didn't like adulting.
Well, and I guess by, kind of deferring her kids to her, he wouldn't be taking responsibility like he was unable to do with his own child that ended up hurting his own child.
He did not really want to be married to somebody like Sylvia Pardo either, and he should have told her that, but he doesn't understand that concept, apparently.
I think that he would have been happy to be married to her.
To Sylvia?
Yeah. He just didn't want all the other
stuff. He has a really weird Jewish way of showing it.
I don't, well, but she left him.
I know, but I'm saying, like, when you're refusing to open a joint account with your spouse and telling them to take care of their own fucking kids or whatever you're saying that makes this happen, and you're lying about your kid that you have nothing to do with but claim as a tax dependent, you're not exactly super high on my Christmas card list anyway.
The other thing is, there's different levels of stuff going on here. Like, for example, so what this boils down to basically is that because Sylvia didn't appreciate the lying by omission that occurred in him not mentioning his disabled child, that, he was responsible essentially for the disability. So he didn't mention that. And then the fact that he had walked away from that situation, but then I don't know what kind of difference claiming him as a tax dependent would be, but like apparently it's sort of a big deal. I don't know that it would be insurmountable. However, you're looking at a situation where you've got this guy who, he essentially, when his wife divorces him after this revelation, he says, well, because you've done that, I'm going to kill your entire family on Christmas while wearing a Santa suit. And clearly he planned it, like from the moment she filed for divorce, right? And in what world? Well, first of all, no matter what somebody does to you, it does not behoove anyone to go and kill somebody's entire family. Like, it's not going to make you feel... I think
that goes without saying.
Well, I thought it did too. But I know that, vengeance is a state of mind. And I guess with age, I realize I don't care about getting revenge on anybody. And that makes it even harder to understand this guy's mindset because... he could have done a lot of things. The people that he killed could have, lived their lives a lot longer. And instead, because he had a piss poor life that he didn't want to take responsibility for, he took everybody out. And I guess he showed her, right? I mean, no.
He didn't show anybody. This was I'm
glad he didn't get away.
Oh, I'm definitely glad. I mean, he was never going to get away. He wasn't smart enough to get away.
I don't think so either. But like I'm glad he got melted like he did because, and see, that sounds vengeful, but that's not really what I mean. I just mean it. I hope it would be good. It would be like a karmic experience to know that he realized at the end, as he was melted into his Santa suit, that like, wow, maybe that wasn't the best idea because he didn't feel any better.
I would say that his very end, just that part, was fitting for his actions.
Like the suicide alone?
Melting into his suit and then ending up having to kill himself because he couldn't stand the 3rd-degree burns is fitting.
Yeah, I think so. I wonder, I think he probably went to his brother's house because it was somewhere that was empty.
Yeah, he couldn't go home.
But he could have killed himself in one of the rental cars, though.
Yeah, that was like a pretty weird. I would be curious about their relationship too to see what kind of
Do you have
fu that
any
was.
Do you have any idea if the brother was on the list?
The list is incomplete. What I had looked at was.
And do you know if they had the same mother?
I believe he had the same mother as the brother. That's why I was curious if it was also like him having some kind of plans for her. I'm looking really
Well,
quick, but I don't
my
see.
my point kind of is it's actually kind of strange for I don't know how many siblings he had or how many children his mother had, but it seemed almost until the revelation that he killed himself in his brother's house, it seemed almost like he would be an only child, right? Like that's how their relationship sort of seemed.
The fact that he could get into his brother's house implies that they at least know each other. You know what I mean?
I understand that, but I feel like I don't know how. I mean, he could have broken in. We don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I'm sure they knew each other. I mean, I just don't know if there was bad blood there. Like, if somebody had been home, were they going to get it too? Or had he just given up? Who knows? I mean, we'll never know.
so here's what. Well, give me a second. So from an article in the New York Daily News from December 30th of 2008, I do find, this is all just new information, but it pertinent to the conversation. So it says that Bruce Jeffrey Pardo had a longer hit list. The man who killed 9 people at his former mother-in-law's Christmas party while dressed as Santa Claus had plotted the attack for several months, and his hit list was longer than first thought. Police said Monday that Bruce Pardo planned to also kill his mother and his ex-wife's divorce attorney, but committed suicide before he could complete the task. Authorities said his plan was thorough and detailed. Pardo had a getaway car, an airplane ticket to the Midwest, several guns, and high-powered ammunition only sold outside the state. He launched the attack on New Year's Eve. Police Lieutenant Pat Buchanan said Pardo knew his mother had been invited to the party and intended to kill her because he felt she sided with his ex-wife in their divorce. Lucky for her, she felt ill and opted not to go to the party. His ex-wife's attorney was also apparently a target. Police Chief Kim Rainey said Pardo left a rented vehicle near the attorney's Glendale home the day of the shooting and filled it with maps, clothes, and a fuel tank. But Pardo never made it to the vehicle. He was burned while torching the in-laws' house and later killed himself at his brother's house. His next destination was Glendale, said Rainey. So that's where he was headed. The brother's not necessarily on the list. I did not dig deep into the brother because the brother survived, and I think.
Yeah, the brother didn't really have anything to do with it. I was just curious, as it's just curious why he went there. I would not be. I would feel really irritated if one of my brothers came to my house on Christmas Eve after they'd pulled a stunt like he did and then killed themselves in my house.
I'd be too embarrassed to go to one of my siblings' house after something like that.
Well, I'd just be like, I mean, take your drama elsewhere because, that now has impacted me in a way that it didn't need to. I mean, not to be selfish, but like, seriously, you couldn't have just, I don't know, whatever, driven off into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I mean.
But, I mean, that's just evil. I don't like this story as. I mean, I don't like any of the crime stories we cover from a personal perspective, but this one made me feel really, really weird after.
The guy had problems, no question, and I'm sure his mother probably has an enormous amount of guilt because, in some ways, she sort of started one of the downward spirals that led to this. But it's not really her fault. I'm sure she felt like she was doing the right thing, and it would be horribly embarrassing as a mother to realize my son acted this way. So yeah, I would want to do everything I could to minimize the damage, but it just, didn't matter. I wonder if he even realized that his mother wasn't there. I can only imagine the chaos that
When you start by shooting the kid coming towards Santa, I don't think you know anything that happened after that.
That's what I imagine. Like, because especially under the circumstances where, he clearly wanted things to go his way and like in life. And so I would imagine an explosion you weren't planning on would rattle you a little bit or a lot.
Yeah.
And so there's really no telling, what he did or didn't realize at the time.
Yeah. Anytime you rise to the level that you're shooting children, there's something like, there's just horror that comes with that. Absolute horror.
I hope that little girl, the 8-year-old, and actually all the kids that were involved, I hope they all recovered and were able to get the help that they would need to, recover from that, because it would be really awful for a little girl to experience, or any child to experience that. And what a jerk for doing it.
Thank you for joining us. We are sponsored by LabRottiCreations.com. You can check them out at LabRottiCreations.com, and you can still use the code CRIMEXS for a fun pop pet portrait of your own pet. You can also reach us on Twitter, Instagram at TrueCrimeXS, or you can give us a call if you know anything about any of the cases that we're talking about at 252-365-5593. You can also reach us at Gmail at truecrimexs@gmail.com, and you can check out our website at www.truecrimexs.com. We'll see you next time. This is True Crime XS.
when the snow's come.